Hi, I'm Adam Rosen from the law offices of Polsky Schultz Rosen with my partner Scott Granelli here today. And we're going to talk a little bit about workers' comp and what we do here and how the firm runs and try to give you some little inside scoop as to what we do here and how we can be of service to our clients and questions we might want to have answered for you guys.
We thought we would try to informalize things a little bit, and instead of just lecturing, because we hated our lectures in law school. At least I did. I can't speak for Adam, but I can guess he probably did too. So we thought we might just talk a little bit more about us and how we ended up here, how we've been practicing this as long as we have, and why we've been practicing this as long as we have. I would start off by just reminding everybody that we can't give legal advice unless we represent you. We're happy to educate. We're happy to share. We're happy to explain. And please take this as that. If you need legal advice, feel free to give us a call. We can give you a free consultation to discuss your case and see if we can help you out. And if we represent you, then we're happy to provide you with advice. This is simply an educational forum for everyone to learn a little bit more about workers' comp and maybe about being a lawyer and why one would be in this practice in the first place. So I think I'll kick it off by asking you, Ad, because
Yes.
we're relatively the same age, although
Yes.
by the gray hair you can tell I'm probably a little bit older. How did you end up doing workers' comp in the first place?
Well, it's funny you should ask. This is my first job out of law school. I started here 24 years old, which was sadly about 30 years ago. Um, when I interviewed here, I had no idea really what workers' comp is. And I think it's instructive that it's a field of law that it's really not discussed much in law school. And we've talked about this. My full association with workers' compensation was about an hour's worth of study for the bar exam where they teach you three facts about workers' comp and what it can be. I started working here because I liked the people who were running the place and the vision that they had, and I felt very encouraged and pleased about the thought of helping people. I would rather help people get paid and get taken care of and protect their families as opposed to working on the other side, which would be to deny people the rights that I feel have been bargained for and they should be protected for. So that's why I honestly have dedicated my entire career to this. I've done nothing else. It's never a dull moment. And how about you? Why have you done this?
Well, it's kind of ironic that you mentioned about working for carriers because actually I started out on the other side of the table from you, where I represented carriers and I represented insurance companies, and our objective was to limit our clients' liability as best as possible. And what I found interesting about workers' comp, and I still find interesting about workers' comp, is the fact that you meet people from across the board.
Very true.
And one day you're dealing with a person who maybe cleans offices,
Right.
and the next day you could be dealing with a professional athlete. And that broad spectrum showed me a whole different world that I don't think I was aware of that goes on every day. How there are people who, if you go out to a restaurant and have dinner, there's probably 6 or 7 different people who have 6 or 7 different jobs
Sure.
who all have to work together like a football team to make a dish for you.
Yep.
And all of those people are exposed to dangers in the workplace. And I quickly became or understood that being a carrier was not for me because I had too much emotionally invested in it and wanting to help people. And I ended up coming over here and we've been together for a long time now.
Yeah, we have. We've been together for 25 years. I think what's interesting to what you're saying about that is, we have had professional athletes without mentioning names. We down to, one of the things that I love about what we do is I enjoy people and I enjoy talking to people. And that's, if you know me, it's really the truth. I can sit and talk about anything with anybody. But we have offices in Rockville Center, in Nassau County, in Suffolk County, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn. We see people from every walk of life, from every different socioeconomic stratosphere. We have people who do white collar jobs, blue collar jobs, whatever kind of jobs. People that we deal with, we interact with on a daily basis. People who help us on a daily basis, like a waiter, or an Uber driver, or a custodian, or again, it goes on and on and on. There's no set list. Anybody who works is a potential client of ours, meaning anybody who works is at a potential risk of being injured. And if they are, hopefully we can help them. One of the things that always surprised me when I first started this, one of the most dangerous jobs and the most common jobs that have to be injured is a home health aide. And you would say to yourself, well, how could that be? Why would they be hurt? Well, they're lifting. A lot of people who have trouble taking care of themselves, whether it be getting them into bed, dealing with family members who may get agitated. It's a frustrating, profession. Walking with them, errands, car accidents. I mean, there's a million things just to that one section of people that you wouldn't think would be injured a lot, and they're injured all the time. And that kind of blew my mind, and still does as we go on. Is there a profession that you didn't expect to have as many cases as we do see?
Yeah, well, I think one thing you said that reminded me is that it's also helped us get a perspective in terms of our outside office life. Because you mentioned home health aides, and I had a family member that became very dependent on a home health aide, and I better understood what their work was like, what their responsibilities were like, and how hard it was for them. And it made it easier to work with that person and help that person and understand that person as much as they helped my family member at the same time.
I see it when I take an Uber or my kids take an Uber. They know you talk to these people. They're not just there to serve you. You really have a different understanding of what their life is like when you see what they have to go through, the amount of hours they have to work to support their families. For me, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, it really gives me a better perspective of how lucky I am in certain respects, but how people will do anything to protect their family, to work for their family. I mean, how many clients do we have? They have 2 and 3 jobs, and you'll say, well, that's like full-time job. That's a full-time job. When do you sleep? Well, and it's really, I mean, I find it very moving to see what people will do to support their families.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we're constantly reminded because of the accidents we deal with, and then when something big happens, say 9/11, say COVID, and you realize the people that are putting themselves literally on the line for you every single day, and they're all comp cases, and they need to be taken care of, and unfortunately, they aren't always taken care of until they come to an attorney, and the attorney is able to walk them through the system, get things. We're still fighting COVID cases, believe it or not. There are insurance companies who are still fighting it. We have at least 2 death cases, people who passed away after being exposed to COVID at work, and the carriers are still disputing those.
Where there's clear connection between the only reason they were doing this job was either they were a first responder or we had people at transit authority who had to be at work. Some of us had the luxury of being home. These people didn't. Even people who work in supermarkets, they were feeding us. If they weren't there, we were, what were we doing? So when Scott was talking about being a carrier's attorney in the past, that makes me crazy. You say, okay, there's common, I get fighting and claim, but there's also common sense. I mean, these people are really trying to protect us or help us. We always think of police officers helping us, but there's also all these people who go through all these aspects of our lives without us realizing what they're doing to impact our lives. And it's a fascinating part of, I find, of what we do here.
And I think as a layperson, sometimes you don't realize just how many people are covered under workers' compensation and how many different people that you would say, oh, that's not a work accident. They truly are work accidents, like the COVID cases, for example. And that's part of what we have to do as attorneys, is educate people as to the fact that they might be covered and what their rights are and what their benefits are, and make sure that we secure those benefits for what they've done, what they've given to their companies, what they've given in terms of their careers and their lives. They're often cut short or at least put on hold because of an injury. And we need to help them recover from that as best as we possibly can.
Didn't you have a 2 truths and a lie for us as far as
I did
workers' comp
well,
goes?
I think we could probably start with that. So we didn't want to, if you've watched any of our other podcasts, and I'm sure everyone has,
Obviously,
and if you haven't, you need to.
They're on our website.
We've tried to give you some information about workers' compensation, and we would be remiss not doing that again today. So I thought I would play a game, 2 truths and a lie. I'm going to present 3 different items to Adam, and hopefully he's going to know which one the lie is. But we can talk about, I'd like to talk about all 3 anyway. So 2 truths and a lie. 1, workers' compensation is a no-fault system. Meaning that you don't need to have a party to blame. There doesn't have to be a cause of an accident other than the fact that you're working. Number 2, volunteers can get workers' compensation. And number 3, an employer defines if you're an employee or if you're an independent contractor, and then comp listens to the employer. So should we talk them through? Do you want to guess? Do you want to tell us which one is the lie?
Well, we can pause for the guess. And now I think most people would be surprised. In my opinion, I I would think people would be surprised that number one, people would think it's not a no fault system. And I think the fact that people always think about how accidents happen on the job, whose fault was it? It doesn't matter. Okay. And I think that's to your point. Um, you could be walking down a flight of stairs for work on a work call or not paying attention because you're document whatever you're doing. You fall down a flight of stairs. People might say, "Oh, you're being very careless." It doesn't matter if you're injured while doing work activities in your work capacity. You are covered. Okay, they can't say to you, "Well, you know, we can't do anything with this because you should have been more careful or you should have been aware of this." It doesn't matter. It really, truly is a no fault system. We hear about car accidents being no fault. They're really not. They're no fault to a point. But if we have a car accident and I'm on the wrong side of the road or I'm intoxicated or whatever it is, fault will come into play. And when there's a settlement, we'll look at who is more at fault than the other one. It's called comparative negligence. But here with workers' comp, it's just literally, were you hurt on the job? If you were, you are covered.
So 100% correct. Number one is a truth. As Adam said, it's not about fault. It's about were you working and did you get hurt? So whether you didn't have a safety harness or whether you tripped over your own feet, they're exactly the same. That's the whole point of workers' compensation is we want to protect as many workers as we possibly can.
And if I may also to add the other end of that, why it's a true no fault system. You mentioned the safety harness. If your job didn't give you the proper materials, or let's say there was a hallway without great lighting, is a very good chance you can't sue your employer. That's kind of the contract. You can't really blame your job, and your job can't really blame you. And that's a much more in-depth part of it. But workers' comp is an imperfect system that is set up to take care of as much as can be taken care of.
Agreed. All right. So number one is a truth. Number two, volunteers can get compensation. Is that a truth or a lie?
I would have to say it's a truth.
You are correct. It is a truth. We have clients, as I mentioned before, we've had clients who are professional athletes, one of who pitched for both the Mets and the Yankees. We had there was another client who played for the Jets.
Yes.
Those are all that one end of the spectrum. We also have had clients who've worked for elections, the people who sit one day a year and take your name and help you vote.
Yes.
We've also had people who have volunteered at camps, volunteered for various organizations. You're still doing something to the benefit of somebody else, some other organization. You're doing
volunteer firefighters.
Volunteer firefighters. Thank you. That they are covered completely. There's a separate law for volunteer firefighters and for volunteer EMTs. That falls within the workers' compensation system that mimics the workers' compensation system. And again, why? Because these people are doing things for someone else, for us, and also oftentimes for an organization or for a group. They're getting a benefit of that employment or that work, and those people are covered under workers' compensation as well. So that makes number two a truth, which leaves the obvious answer. Number three is a lie. Employers are not the ones who dictate the question of whether you're an independent contractor, which would keep you out of workers' compensation, or whether you're actually an employee in workers' compensation. We look at what is considered a test, a direction and control test. So just because your employer gives you a 1099 doesn't mean you're suddenly an independent contractor. Just because your employer says, I don't have to give you any benefits because you're an independent contractor, that's not the case. You still may very well be part of the workers' compensation system. It's a test it's a factual test, and it's a test that we develop through testimony sometimes or case law. But more often than not, you fall into that workers' compensation bucket because, again, it's a social law designed to protect as many people as we possibly can.
And with that being said, maybe you're wondering right now if it's a no-fault system and it's supposed to favor the employee. Why are we in business? What do we do? Well, it's not always that simple. People hire attorneys who are as smart as Scott, or not quite as smart as Scott, to minimize these claims. And they fight these claims. And sometimes they'll deny that you were injured at all on the job. Or sometimes they'll try to say that you weren't actually working when an accident happened. Or they'll try to minimize the level of your injuries. Or what your settlement would be, or what you might be entitled to. And that's where we come in. We try to see a way to keep the system fair. These insurance companies are multi-billion-dollar corporations who have full staff, legal staff, all kinds of things to help minimize their liability. So we take a personal interest to maximize the value of your claim, to protect you, to make sure that your injuries and your medical treatment is taken care of and you are fairly compensated. And that's where we come in. So I think this is a pretty good place to close this for today. I would implore you to call us with any questions. We can't give legal advice. We certainly can if you have a free consultation with us. This is all we do here. We have 4 offices in Nassau County, Suffolk County, the Bronx, and Brooklyn. So we're pretty much all over what we say city and its in suburbs. And we're happy to help in any way possible. And this is what we do. We look forward to speaking to you and answering any more questions that you would have.
We do have a website, workerscompny.com. We encourage you to visit the website. We're going to hopefully have the ability for you to submit questions that can be answered either through video or something similar. The questions can be asked anonymously. There is no question too dumb, just an attorney. We're the dummies, not the questions. It's always, feel free to ask us anything you want to ask us. If we can pose it as a hypothetical to give general information about workers' compensation, we'd be happy to do, because I think it helps educate people. And once upon a time, for us old people, there was an old ad about an educated client being a best consumer. And I do truly believe that. I think the more our clients know, the better off we both are.
Yeah, that is very true. And thank you so much for watching us today. Thank you.